This is Talking Law on Radio 97 with Despina Priala. She's always here to answer your legal questions, whatever they might be. Happy to do that for you. All you need to do is drop us a few lines into an email or perhaps send it via Facebook. There are a couple of ways you can get in contact with us, but the easiest thing to do is go to radio97.com.au, and down the bottom there you'll find a couple of links to both the Breakfast Facebook page and also our email address, and send those questions to us and Despina will answer them for you.
And on April 6, it was a monumental day in England and Wales as no-fault divorce laws came into effect. They're following Australia's lead because we did this back in the 70s, right, Despina?
Exactly. So when I read this article, it was a massive change in England and Wales, as you said, and it's the most significant change to England's divorce laws in 50 years.
Wowza.
So, and I thought, yeah, what a great story to, I suppose, capitalise on and mention today in today's segment about the difference between what's just happened in England and Wales to the laws that we have currently in Australia and that we have had since 1975.
So we have Gough to thank for that?
We do. We have the Whitlam Government that introduced the Family Law Act, as perhaps a lot of people would be aware, that was introduced in 1975 in Australia. So this is Australian law. It is not a state-by-state law. So this is the Family Law Act. It's a federal Commonwealth Act, and that's been around since 1975. And he introduced that. It was a wonderful introduction to our laws, and they are still in place today. So let's talk about, what does this no-fault divorce law mean? Because people might be thinking, what does that mean? I don't understand it. Mm-hmm. What is the real significance here for England and Wales, which we've had since 1975? So at its basic level, what we're talking about is a no-fault divorce law means that you can separate and divorce for merely saying that the marriage has broken down irretrievably.
Sure.
So, as compared to the previous laws in place in Australia prior to 1975 and recently in England and Wales, there were grounds for divorce that you actually had to prove or use one of those grounds and then provide evidence that those grounds were established to then be able to file for divorce. And that was very stressful. There's a lot of animosity between the parties and a very costly exercise where you couldn't just simply agree or just have an understanding between the parties. Okay, well, we're going to separate. We're going to end up in divorce, and we'll go off and lodge the various applications. Prior to 1975 in Australia and recently in England and Wales, it wasn't like that. And you had to have one of these grounds, which we'll mention in a minute, to be able to file for divorce. So the basic premise was you had to find fault on one of the parties to be able to file for divorce. So that's hence the term no-fault divorce laws. Yeah. And prior to 1975 in Australia, we're talking about, and it was similar in England and Wales, there were 14 grounds under a previous act that would allow a grant of divorce. And they included adultery, desertion, cruelty, insanity, and habitual drunkenness. So, wow. And the divorce applications, as you can imagine, were often opposed. And then parties would have to hire not just lawyers, but then they'd also have to hire private investigators to be able to gather up evidence to then be able to file for divorce. And you can imagine it was quite a costly affair. And sometimes it was so hard that parties never ended up in divorce anyway.
And so obviously it's made it somewhat easier than it used to be.
Oh, absolutely, because we have the no-fault laws since 1975, so you don't have to go through that process. You have to just state and establish that the marriage has irretrievably broken down. And, of course, with that, you have to show that there's no prospect of reconciliation and that the parties have separated for at least 12 months. Yep. So those are the requirements for a divorce. Interestingly, you can have a separation under one roof. So there's many cases out there, and the family court has recognised that you don't necessarily have to live in separate houses for that 12-month separation to occur, but it has to be under one roof. It can be seen as a separation as well in certain circumstances. But yes, it's a lot easier for us since 1975 to have the no-fault divorce. And I guess for some of the listeners out there, they'll understand 1975 was an interesting time. I think I was very young back then. If I give my age away, then the people will know how old I am now. So I might not do that, but I think I was probably 2 years out of nappies. But anyway, so very good laws that came into place. But if you look at what happened in the lead up to 75, you had the 60s and 70s, and there was a big cultural and social movements happening through those times, as people will definitely recall. And that really pushed these laws to come into place in Australia.
Yeah, well,
they've been excellent laws and hasn't really changed since 1975.
Yeah, well, props to Australia for doing it so early, because looking at England and the UK, it now seems to me that they're way far behind. That seems crazy to me that this was only just abolished.
Exactly. You wonder what took them so long to
Mm.
do it. I know, and I can't really comment on that.
Yeah.
But really, hopefully, this will end the blame game culture in divorces that we saw in this country before 1975, and hopefully in England and Wales that will actually end that whole blame game culture, as I said, because you don't have to cite reasons for divorce. It's going to be easier. It's going to be less costly. Perhaps divorce lawyers might not like it. I don't know. But the good divorce lawyers should like it.
Yeah.
But also, you see, there'll be more divorces.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine, because it's going to be a lot easier
Yeah.
for people to do that.
Well, it'd be interesting to look back at maybe in 1976 to 1980, what the spike would have been in the divorce rate back then. It probably went up a little bit here in Australia if things, became so easy. They're like, finally, I can divorce Barry, thank goodness.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
interestingly, on that point, in the first year the law was implemented in Australia in 1975, there was an absolute surge of divorces in Australia.
Yeah.
So there was,
Yeah, plenty of
There
Barrys
was.
out there that needed to be divorced.
There was. Absolutely. And the courts were completely overwhelmed
Wow.
from the opening day.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. It's very sad, but good on them for new start, getting things done. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much again, Despina. If anyone does want to get in touch with you in regards to anything to do with the law, where can they go?
So they can phone the office 55291 They can email info@prialalegal.com.au. And I will say, of course, with the long weekend coming up, we won't be working. Our office is closed, of course, from Thursday night all the way to Tuesday morning for the long weekend. Or this segment will, of course, be uploaded onto YouTube most likely before the long weekend. So I'll see if I can do that. Yes.
Give yourself a break, please, Despina. Thank you so much again. And if anyone does want to get in touch with us too, we also will be on holiday, but we'll be back Tuesday. You can email us breakfast97@superradionetwork.com.au. Thank you again, Wayne and Despina.
See you next week.
See you then.